Hello everybody, again my name is Rachel. Welcome to the penguin exhibit. Anybody here like penguins? Yeah! It's hard not to like them, right? These are African penguins. They are non-migratory nesting birds. So that means that they're pretty much staying right on the coastal areas. They don't have to go very far to get their food. And they nest. We can see little caves and burrows in the back of the rock work here where all of these birds nest. And they do that behavior out in the wild as well. Now, one of the reasons why all of these birds are kind of the same size, they look similar, is because they are sharing duties of that egg and in the burrow. So they stay with the mated pair for a while. And all the males and females look pretty similar. It's hard to tell individuals apart, but for your sake, we put bands on all of them. You guys notice those? The color bands? Yeah. So this is the system. If there's a bird with a band on the left wing, it's a female. Bird with a band on the right wing, that's a male. And if they have the same color armband, that's a mated pair. So you'll often see those two preening each other's feathers or going into the same burrow together or doing other kind of activities that mated pairs do together. I believe we have 8 mated pairs in here right now, but I'll invite our biologist out right now and we can get the numbers from her to confirm. Hello, Crystal.
Hello.
How are you this morning?
I'm doing very well.
How many mated pairs do you have in here?
We have 6 mated pairs, 7 mated pairs. We have 7 mated pairs and we have 2 extra males, so we have 2 bachelor males.
Would those bachelors ever get a mate?
Hopefully yes. We only have room for 18 birds in this exhibit though, so chances are one of those males will probably be shipped to another facility that has a female waiting in exchange for a female.
And is that a common activity to kind of trade birds?
Yes, these guys belong to what's called a species survival plan. None of these penguins came from Africa and none of them will go into Africa. We try to keep the genetic population pretty diverse here. So we only breed couples that haven't had a lot of chicks and only if there's a home for those penguins to go to. If all of our pairs have had a lot of chicks, then we'll separate them up with other pairs throughout the other zoos collections to make sure that we can keep the genetics very diverse.
For example, our oldest bird, who's right up there in front with you, blue band on the right, he has great grandchildren, right?
He does. Some of his grandchildren are actually in the exhibit. You'll see them with beige band.
They're pretty special. Any guesses how old these birds can get out in the wild?
Nope.
They're about 10. Oh.
I was hoping to cheat. None of them saw.
About 10 years. Okay, so how old is Pierre?
Pierre is actually going to be 30 in February.
Oh my god.
Very impressive, and it's kind of a rule of thumb that captive animals live longer, right?
It is. There are no predators. They have great veterinary care, and they have as much food as they want, which is the main reason these guys are endangered right now. There's a lack of food out there. We're overfishing and eating what they like ourselves.
Definitely, and one of the things that we do to help that situation is we give them sustainable fish, right?
We do. They have 2 different options that are not what they would get in the wild, but nutritionally the same. They have capelin, which is a little bit smaller, more protein-based fish, or they can have herring, which is a little bit larger, more fatty fish.
And what does it mean to be sustainably caught?
It means that these fish were caught or farmed in a way that doesn't affect the environment as a whole.
Very interesting. And I do have seafood watch cards if you guys are interested, if you're seafood or sushi fans. It's a pretty easy step to help out these birds. Like she said, biggest competition is from us for food. Now, it looks like you're dressed for the water, and some of the birds are in the water. Are you going to get in a minute or two?
I am. We actually feed in the water here. It's a more natural process for these guys and more neutral. Our exhibit's a little different than some others where we have a very thin area of land up here with the burrows along the back. The burrows are where they lay their eggs and their chicks hatch, so they're very protective. If I have a hungry bird that runs across all these burrows to eat on the other side, we would have a lot of squabbles. So it's neutral and natural to feed in the water.
So we might see a lot of fighting surrounding those different nest boxes if we watch for long enough.
Exactly. You'll probably see a little bit here and there during the feed even.
Very cool. And before we let you get in the water, you brought somebody with you to help you today.
Yep, this is Joe, and he actually keeps track of how many fish and what type of fish each individual bird eats.
Very cool. Well, you get in the water for a few minutes, and then if you guys have any questions for Crystal after that, we can ask her. As you can imagine, a little bit of multitasking getting in the water, talking to people and feeding these birds. They're very hungry. This is also a good time, I think, to really see the different personalities of these birds. Some of them are very vocal about what kind of fish they like and they want it immediately. Some will play with it. offer food on land. For example, Pierre, that oldest bird that we mentioned, she'll probably offer him a chance on land after she's fed bees. Now, we do keep track, like she said, Joe back there is marking the types of fish and which birds are eating the fish. And that's important. If they eat more, it could mean they're ready to lay an egg. It could mean they're ready to molt, which is a yearly process. Or if they're eating less, that's a more important thing. That means they're probably not feeling so well. They're feeling a little bit sick. So we want to monitor that definitely. So all these birds can live as long as Pierre at a ripe old age of 29, which is very, very long. Any guesses how many pounds of fish these birds can eat in a day? One of my favorite penguin facts. They weigh anywhere between 6 to 10 pounds. Any guesses how many pounds they can eat in a day? 12? Way less than 12.
10.
Less than 10. They can eat about a pound of fish a day. It doesn't sound very impressive, but if you were a 10-pound bird and you're eating a pound of fish a day, it's about 10% of your body weight, which is quite a bit. If we were to do the math, and a human adult were to go on that same diet, you'd have to eat about 80 hamburgers to get that same calorie intake that they do in the day. So you can imagine they have very fast metabolisms. And Crystal, they're also digesting the entire fish as well, right?
That's correct. They're digesting the bones, the skin, or the scales, the fins, and all.
Very impressive. How do they do that in their digestive tract?
They actually have a pretty strong acidic stomach that does it all for them. In fact, with a lot of places that have penguins outside and not in an indoor exhibit have trouble with them digesting coins, and they don't digest round.
Very interesting. What's that in the paper towel in your hand?
I actually have one bird who gets an allergy medication, Pierre, our older bird that we were talking about. With age comes a few problems every once in a while. Pierre likes to sneeze a lot, so he gets an allergy med every day. That's what's in this fish.
Do any of the other birds get medication or vitamins?
Every bird gets a vitamin every morning, and when you freeze and thaw food, it loses some of its nutritional value. So to make up for that, we shove pills down in the belly of the fish every morning, and they each get one.
Very cool. Now, do any of you guys have any questions for Crystal at this point?
I do.
Yes.
She's giving the penguins fishies because fishies make them do better.
Oh, he had a very good observation about them enjoying the fish and the meal that they're getting. Crystal, on the flip side of that, what are their predators out in the wild?
These guys can be eaten in the water by sharks, seals or sea lions, and even whales. They have land and aerial predators too.
Oh, can you give us an example of those?
Just about anything that can walk up to their nest and take on this little beak of theirs.
Definitely. It looks like one of the fish got dropped and they're kind of playing with it a little bit. What happens if they don't eat those fish that go all the way down?
I have a few birds that are great at picking up the leftover fish and aren't picky about the shape or texture of the fish. And then I have a bunch of little guys on the bottom of the tank, another type of animal, sea stars. If you guys look real close, you might be able to see some of the sea stars digesting the fish that have been dropped earlier today.
Very cool. Any other questions?
How cold is the water?
Oh, very good question. How cold is that water?
The water is about 61 degrees right now. It's slowly going down in temperature. Our temperature, both in air and the water, fluctuate throughout the year just like they would in Africa. So the air temperature is about 71, it's about 10 degrees warmer, and it'll go down to about 65 throughout the year, and the water temperature down to about 55.
Very cool.
Some of them look bigger. What does that look like?
Oh, he noticed that some of the birds are a little bit bigger than the other ones. What does that indicate?
It's not really a good indicator for anything in particular. Some of the younger birds, like this one that I'm giving a fish to right now, is younger, so smaller, but with age will come the size. But it's not always the case. Some of our younger birds are the bigger birds. It's also not a good indicator for male and female. The only way to know that for sure is by blood.
And one interesting process they go through every year is molting. So if you ever come back or check out our webcam, some of these birds will look extremely swollen, because that's the first step in the process to push out those old feathers. I don't think there's any birds molting right now, right, Crystal?
No, I have one bird who's getting a little bigger. She may or may not start. Another reason that they'll get large if they're female is to lay an egg. So that's another good indicator, is their size for that. So we'll see. It's actually the girl that just stole the penguin out of my hand, blue band on the left. She's a little bit larger than she normally is.
Very cool. Any other questions? Oh, why don't we put any live fish in there, Crystal, for them to eat?
We do every once in a while. The problem is this exhibit is organism if it were made for fish. And we would have some of these more aggressive penguins eating nonstop, and some of the less aggressive penguins not getting as much as they would like. We would have no way of administering vitamins either.
Very cool. Any other questions?
I have another one. Why do the fishes get to stay alive for a little bit?
Why don't they? Oh, I think he's curious why we don't feed them the live fish, why they don't get to stay alive for as long. But another part to that is what Joe's doing back there. Can you reiterate what he's up to?
Yeah, Joe is keeping track of how many fish and what type of fish each animal eats. And that's a good indicator on how they're feeling that day. If they don't eat a lot, it could be that they're not feeling well that day. If they eat a whole lot, it's a good indicator for me that they're going to go into their molt, or if they're female, lay an egg. But the fish are what I was talking about don't last in the water, not the birds.
Don't last very long. And it's a lot easier to keep track of those dead fish when they're eating them instead of live fish, I'm sure, if you had a bucket of live fish.
Yeah, especially these guys all look the same pretty much underwater unless you get a good glimpse at their wing bands, because that's actually what their coloration is for, is blending in from looking down. Their dark black back blends in with the deep dark ocean. So when they're underwater, unless I can get a good clear picture of that band, I can't see who they are.
Now, are there any other individual characteristics besides that band?
Yes, if for some reason they lost their bands, these guys all have a unique spot pattern on their bellies. We have a few with facial characteristics too. Osio, who has white cheeks, is actually swimming around right here. You can see everyone else has a black mark all the way around. We have a few birds, like this guy who molted a little funny last time. It looks like he's got product in his feathers. He's got a little mohawk up here on top. We have a bird whose back feathers are always crumpled, so it just depends on the bird.
Very cool. And those belly spots, I think, are very interesting because after they molt, they have the belly spots, so it's just like our fingerprints, which I think is pretty cool. Yes.
Are there any other birds that don't fly?
Oh, are there any other birds that don't fly, Crystal? Good question.
There are quite a few birds that don't fly. Many species of penguins, there are about 18 species of penguins. We actually have another bird that doesn't fly here at the Academy right now. We have ostriches. There's also kiwis. There are quite a few that don't fly.
Very cool. But even though they don't fly, they still use those flight muscles, and they can reach pretty top speeds in the water swimming.
Yes, these guys can go about 10 miles per hour, which is twice as fast as Michael Phelps was just swimming in the Olympics.
Very cool. Yes.
What's the longest time that the penguins stay underwater without surfacing?
Oh, very good question. What's the longest that they can stay underwater without surfacing?
This type of penguin, about 2 minutes. They go about 30 feet to 60 feet on average, but if they really need to get away from a predator, or if they're looking for a specific type of fish, they can go a few hundred in that 2 minutes on one breath, and then they have to resurface to take another breath.
And what is the penguin predator?
Oh, and what are the predators again, Crystal?
Sharks, seals or sea lions, and whales in the water.
Very cool. One of those birds just fell in the water. That's pretty funny. Any final questions for Crystal? No? Well, let's give her a round of applause for coming out today.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Crystal. My name's Rachel. If you guys have any more questions, or the Seafood Watch cards are over there if you're interested in one.